Okay, we're going to call the Thursday, September 26th, 2024 meeting of the City Charter Review Committee to order. And we have Rebecca with us again tonight, so if you please call the roll.
Diane Gutierrez.
Present.
Jeffrey Hanks.
Present.
Hank, sorry about that. I added an S. Jonathan Foreman.
Present.
Dr. Ruben Martinez.
Present.
Jill Rowe. Here. Pam Weil.
Here.
Dr. Veronica Wilkerson Johnson.
Present.
And Dale Rightoff. Present. Thank you. Oh. And Lynn Richardson.
Last but not least.
In the I saw
Thank you.
Mark Meadows and Stout.
Okay, all the committee members are here, so we'll move on to 1.2, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Dr. Martinez, supported by Dr. Wilkerson Johnson. Any changes or corrections? Additions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Same, opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Item 1.3, approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2004 minutes. I would move approval with the addition, or sorry, the correction of that the mayor is not going to sign this. It would be chair of the committee signing this.
Where is it?
On the last page,
Oh, just.
on the signature line,
Oh, just in terms of the formatted form, really, is that what we're talking about?
mayor wasn't here, but I'm here. So I think that's the way it's supposed to be on the committee. So is there a second for that?
Okay.
It's been moved by Gutierrez and supported by Ms. Webb. Any other changes or corrections?
I've got a question. Now, was last meeting recorded?
Yes.
Okay, because I find these a little thin, but if there's a recorded backup, I'm done with that.
Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved with that one change. Moving on to new business, we have 2.1, the committee member and staff introductions. We're doing this for those that are in attendance here so that you understand who's on the committee. So thank you for coming. And I think we're going to go ahead and start with Lynn Richardson. We kind of prepared a little bit about just telling you a little bit about us. So we'll go ahead.
My name is Lynn Richardson. I have been a resident of East Lansing for the past 37 years. I live in the Pinecrest neighborhood, and I make my living as an attorney working for the Michigan Supreme Court for the last 22 years. Are we just going around? My name is Pam Weil. I'm a lifetime East Lansinger. I'm an East Lansing High School graduate, and I worked at the university for almost 40 years. I spent almost 30 years on parks committees, both East Lansing and the county. And my work entails IT, disaster recovery, planning, continuity, project management, infrastructure.
I'm Jeffrey Hank. I've lived in Bailey for about 20 years. My kids go to school. I work for the university. Attorney is my day job. I've written a section of the Census Charter, Lansing Charter, and look forward to working on it.
Good evening, I'm Ruben Martinez. I'm a retired faculty member from Michigan State. I've lived in East Lansing for 17 years and I'm a practicing sociologist. And thank you for coming to me.
Hi, I'm Diane Gutierrez, and I'm the chair of this committee. I'm a nurse and lived in East Lansing for 44 years, lived in the Pinecrest neighborhood as well. I've worked on I've been on the planning commission for 6 years, been on the library board of trustees, and a member of council for 9 years, 2 of which I was the mayor. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Jill Rohde. I live in the city center building downtown. I am a CPA and have worked in the municipal field my entire career, including as the treasurer of the city of Lansing, treasurer and deputy finance director of the city of Lansing, and the Ingham County Financial Services Director. And I was the vice chair of the financial review team.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Veronica Wilkerson Johnson. I'm in the University of Michigan Government Relations Office in Lansing. for many years, and I teach at Lansing Community College. Lived in the Pinecrest subdivision for 30 years now. Children grew up here in East Lansing, and I'm an author as well as a person who really appreciates you being here this evening.
My name is Jonathan Foreman. I am an East Lansing resident for the last 3 years. I live in the Falcon Point neighborhood. I'm an assistant public defender for the Ingham County Office of the Public Defender. Before that, I worked I clerked at both Michigan Supreme Court and the Eastern District of Michigan. And this is my first real involvement in local government, but I'm very excited to be here and thank you for being here.
Hi, my name is Dale Kledoff. I've lived in East Lansing for 7 years. I work as a financial analyst at the Michigan Department of Treasury in the Bureau of Local Government and School Services. I'm also a student in MSU's Master of Public Policy.
Okay, that's our committee members, and we have 3 staff here, or 3 East Lansing primary people that are key to our committee, and I'll start with Rebecca, if you introduce yourself.
I'm Rebecca Urdialis. I've been with the city 24 years, and I'm happy to help out today.
Robert?
I'm Robert Bellman, I'm city manager, and I just completed my first year with the city of East Lansing, and prior to that, 30 years in local government management.
Sure. My name is Tony Chubb. I'm the city attorney. I've been the city attorney for 3 years, but in 16 years of practice, I've only done municipal law. I've also served on or oversaw 3 charter review commissions and currently oversee another charter review committee. Thank you for being here.
So now you know all about us, but we're going to move on to the new business, which is our item 2.2. And Tony Chubb, our city attorney, is going to kind of go through just a preface to explain what we can do, can't do, what we're going to do, and give you an idea of the framework that we're working within.
Sure. So we've already talked about the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act as it applies to the committee. But so as it relates to the public, the important part is that they understand that this committee is subject to the Open Meetings Act, which means anytime the quorum of them meet, which is a majority of the body, it has to be noticed at least 18 hours beforehand, giving the time, place, and location and purpose of the meeting. We've already set out the schedule, which is published on the website, and it sets forth all of those meetings. And then likewise, we are subject to the Freedom of Information Act, which means that any of the documents created and passed to or from this committee or its members are subject to review, absent some privilege such as attorney-client privilege. The Home Rule City Act is what we're working within those confines. It's the state law that requires that the city have a charter, and then also sets forth what is permissible within that charter, what's mandatory in the charter, and what is impermissible. That's how our charter was adopted, but it was adopted over 40, 50 years ago. And so from time to time, and as set forth in the charter, every 10 years, we are supposed to review all ordinances, including the charter, to determine whether there should be updates. The last time there was a comprehensive update of our charter was 1997, and it was accomplished in a process exactly like we're doing here. The Home Rule City Act sets forth 2 different ways to amend a charter. What we're working through here likely is a charter amendment or several charter amendments, and those are limited in scope to 1 topic. There can be multiple that will be produced and can be on the same ballot, but the questions have to be limited to 1 specific topic per question. And it can, recent charter amendments that have been proposed in the city have been to change the size of the council from 5 to 7 members and to change the swearing in date from the Tuesday after the election to the first Tuesday of the following year of the election. There's also a charter review commission that can be created, which is a slightly different process if you want to do a charter revision. And that's a very large scale change to the charter. The one example I would give, there's not exactly a litmus test, but it would generally be changing from like a city manager form of government to a strong mayor form of government. And so what will happen is that I saw some comments from the public that came in and said, well, they were frustrated because they thought that was exactly the issue that this committee should tackle. And so I just want to make clear, it's not that this committee can't make those recommendations. It's just that if this committee made a recommendation for that issue or something of a similar overhaul or complete rewrite of the charter, what would have to happen is the council would have to agree and then pass a resolution to elect a charter review commission to see if they came up with the same result. And so it's certainly not off the table, and certainly something, any of these large scale changes that the committee can't recommend. It's just the process is slightly different.
So moving on to item 2.3. I just want to make sure you got a handout over here with the agenda. I'm not sure if you did or not.
Oh, no. I don't- Anyway, I've been here since 1967 in East Lansing. So, and I've been on the neighborhood president of the Southeast Carroll. And 2 sons through East Lansing School. They're both attorneys now. Well, one is attorney's wife, and the other son is a baby. So, yeah, it's been a good city.
Okay, so item 2.3 is a review of our charter review committee website. And this is for anyone who's listening as well. We put together a website that, first of all, has all the members of the committee. It has bios on the website as well. It will have all of our approved minutes. It'll have our agenda. The agendas are always under our meeting. It has the list, the schedule of our meetings and what we're covering at each meeting. And when you see on our minutes that at our last meeting, we did a charter review process and we printed it out so people would know what steps that this charter review committee can do and what they can't, and then what the city council would do. And aside from that, it also will have the recordings of all of our meetings so that people can listen to them as well. We will, during the course of our meetings, we will have 1 to 4 more meetings where we will have time just set aside to hear public comment about what we've either accomplished before or again, anything that's of concern to them on the charter. And that schedule of those meetings is also on that website. And I think that's all we have. Does anyone have anything else they want to add to that?
Will the recordings be available on the website?
Yes. Moving on to 2.4, review of our schedule and the charter review process. You can see that we had the schedule of what was sent out last time, and so that's in the your packet today for materials. You also see what was the handout last time of the charter review process. That one change that we want to make sure people knew. And then that's to cover those items under 2.4. So then we get to item 3, which is communications from the audience in person and written. In the packet that was available underneath our meeting, and it's not under our website. It's when you click on the meeting, you'll see the agenda and you'll see the agenda packet. So that's the place where you can find it in case anyone was having a difficult time looking for that, looking for it on the website. It's under the meeting on the front page of the
calendar. You click on the date, the calendar, and you get to the meeting.
Yes, well, if you just go to the website of the boards and commissions in the meeting schedule, it will have all the meetings that are on today, and then you click on that. And that's where your agenda packet and everything is there with the minutes. So you saw which correspondence there, but this is the time we've set aside for you to come. Tell us what your concerns are or anything you wanted to say about the charter, and we'll take those under consideration. So
I'm just sort of sitting in. I haven't been for a while now. So,
okay.
it's nice.
All right, well then we'll move on. You have nothing to add, we'll go to our old business. And
Oh, is this correspondence? Is this the email exchange about isn't there a correspondence link under the
There is.
written communication? And so that's what was printed in our packet with the email. Can I suggest that maybe we make a distinction, and was there any external from this committee communications in here, or was this all internal? I didn't receive a chance to go.
We didn't receive any external.
Okay, that's.
So that would be listed individually under the 3.1.
Okay, so there'd be actual itemized, thank you.
So does the committee have anything that they want to add for communications? Lynn?
I got it to work. Yes, I just wanted to raise an issue without addressing the merits of what's in here. Somebody was around up and down my street anyway, in Pinecrest today, and attaching on the screen doors and the front doors of the homes in the area, in sample ballot, on the reverse of which was vote yes on proposal 1 on the ballot. My concern is at the bottom it says paid for by East Lansing Charter Amendment Committee. And I'm concerned that, yes, that's exactly it. There might be some confusion in the electorate between our task here as a committee and the people who have distributed this piece of literature or this sample ballot. The ballot seems to be fine. I'm just concerned about there being confusion, that there may be somebody suggesting that we as a committee are advocating the proposal number 1 be adopted.
Right.
And I'm concerned that we at least, I don't know if there's a way that we can put a disclaimer on our website, if that would be permissible, Tony. I don't know the municipal law in that area. But I also think that we as individuals, to the extent that we're communicating with other people in the community, that we make it clear that there's this distinction between the work that we're doing and the advocacy of whoever is a member of this committee.
Yeah, I certainly think that's a good idea because their confusion is likely, and I think that would be permissible just to put a disclaimer on our portion of the website.
Okay. It says at the bottom, paid for by East Lansing Charter Amendment Committee.
Are there any rules about naming for nonprofits, so you can be as close an acronym as much as anybody you want?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they pre-exist us, but I was looking up on Laura, I don't see a 501c3 filing. So they probably are a campaign or a ballot question committee, which is organized at the county level. And so I'll certainly make sure I understand that it is a organization, but presumably it was created at the county.
Sure.
Ballot question committees in this last lot of time at the state level.
It's a good one as far as that goes.
I don't know that, but ballot question.
Well, we do know that someone participating in it is well versed on this sort of law.
Would it be helpful for us to find out who generated it?
I can tell you.
Not only learning the kind of origin of the committee itself, but who would be the contact person for something like that?
For this organization.
Legal women voters will reform on that page next week with Patrick Rose, attorney representing committee, and Kathy Swedlow, who's Eric Altman, Councilman Altman's wife, representing.
So how about if we, how about if number 1, I go to the council meeting and during the open communication, I just do a, say that we have this committee up and running, and say where we're meeting and then say, and then you may have received a sample ballot that's, was put out by, this committee. That is not our committee. Our work is gonna be over the next year, and just so that it's just stated plainly that way. And then I will reach out to the League of Women Voters and ask if they would do a disclaimer too, that this is, before they start that this is not the charter review committee that was appointed by council. If we do those two things, and then you'll be our ambassadors to tell everybody that that's not the same thing as what we are doing. That's all right. Any other ideas?
I'm the treasurer of the Housing Trust ballot proposal, the county council. Well, I have a login, so I can look everybody up. I can't figure out how to do it on the phone. But I do have a login to the clerk's office, so I can do that. See if maybe I can find if they're logged in there, so.
And I did find them on the Ingham County
Oh, you
Clerk's
did?
website. Yeah, they're.
Oh, okay.
Your way too, and they were created in April 12th of 2024
Then they
was their
don't-
filing.
Okay.
Yep.
So would you draft the disclaimer,
No problem.
get that with the city? Anything else on this topic?
I think it's just important to note that Mr. Chubb said this, but I don't know anything about this. I'm just learning about this for the first time, but it's important for Mr. Chubb that he just noted that this was in April, which was before our committee was formed. So we shouldn't be casting any aspersions on the group. I'm sure it's a coincidence, but just we should, that's how, at least my opinion of how we should approach this.
Did we hear any aspersions?
No, I'm simply saying we shouldn't, and none of our statements should be interpreted that way.
Okay,
I have a point on this that not about the proposal specifically, just thought, if you are familiar with the proposal, it covers housing issues. And something that's not in my current charter, and sort of, just like the Constitution. Provisions which prevent laws from being passed or allow laws to be passed. Going with that, there's concepts that are put into the language of the charter that allow the city to do something or not to do something. We don't have like a preamble or a bill of rights type thing in the charter. That is almost like a piece of that. And then there's other things that are happening in town, like there's some talk about the library, some about the library. We're talking about paying the books, something you and I talked about. So just as we go forward, it might be worth considering that we include some overarching provisions in here that would provide protections. I think that's something that's just, it's not in the charter. So just kind of in line with that, that's
Yeah, here. Glad to hear that stated.
all right, well, that might be, when we talk about what our schedule is for next time, that might be something that falls under our municipal powers. Whether it goes there or at the very end, when you talk about miscellaneous. But I hate to have a Bill of Rights under miscellaneous. So I think we should think about that for next week, and we can probably talk about that if some people have some ideas.
Maybe Mr. Chubb could give us some insight into modifying existing number. That some things I mean in the past, like you can't really adjust number. So if we could insert, we're talking about maybe inserting a preamble or something, whether or not that would make us have to roll over into an issue.
Sure. Yeah, I think we can look at it both ways. I'll take a look at it and look at some other model charter or other cities charters that might have something similar to what Mr. Hayes is talking about.
So unless anyone has any more comments or communications they want to talk about under this item, under 3, let's go to old business. And in the agenda packet, we had the Annex 425 agreement, so you can see how the boundaries of East Lansing were extended over the most recent years to the northern part and even like to the northeast part, just a little bit into Meridian Township. And so that gives us the boundaries of the city. We also have the voting precinct, so you can overlay that. I didn't want the whole map to be so small on the annex portions because they gave me a map that showed every piece of the city that was annexed over the years. And I think it was way before some of us were alive. So I think we just needed to have the most recent one because those are the things that are called our 425 agreement that sometimes will come into play when they're doing changes in zoning and stuff, because when they brought in a 425 agreement from DeWitt or from Bath, they have different zone locations than what we might have in East Lansing. And so sometimes the property, when they want to do something with it, they're in a zone that's different from what we had envisioned in the master plan for East Lansing. And so there's a lot of conversations about that. And then we do talk with the area that was annexed.
Can you define, is it 425 just the name of the agreement with shared boundaries that just, or just a generic term for the
Yes.
agreement?
It's a statute, it's a law. So it references a statute that allows the city to do what is known as a conditional land transfer and then spell out the terms and
It's in a
conditions.
special,
Yes.
yeah.
So should any of that come up, you'll see. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to add anything to that, because you've been involved with almost all of these 425 agreements, if I remember correctly.
Have I turned this on? For the day.
Oh,
Yeah, a lot of the more recent 425s began in the late 90s. And so the first one was the 425 agreement. So there's a certain standard that are in our 425 agreements that other cities, have not utilized. These are essentially economic development agreements that involve the transfer of land to the city of East Lansing. So we've roughly doubled the size of the city since 1995. And the 425 agreements as a standard have said, we're going to keep your zoning. You're going to pay your township taxes until there's a transfer of land or a transfer of ownership of the property. And then our taxes and our zoning can be imposed. So I think we just, maybe 2 weeks ago, Robert, we actually voted on a transfer or a change in zoning from one of the DeWitt existing zones on a piece of property that's at Coolidge and Coleman.
So a parcel inside the whole.
Right. And so we didn't change all the zoning, but we left the township zoning intact. We did the same thing with our 425 agreements, and there's a blank on the number now. It's like a 208 or something like that, which is a different type of 425 agreement. And one of those agreements we have with Meridian Township. That might even be the agreement that we had to build the Costco. So Costco is in East Lansing. It was in the township. One of the problems I would say with 425 agreements is they're usually begun with an annexation petition, which causes a conflict between the township and the city. Nobody likes their property to be taken away, right? So one of the other standard parts of our agreements is that if Meridian Township has 6 mills on their as a property tax, they're going to continue to receive that 6 mills of property tax. Same thing with DeWitt or anybody else we've reached an agreement with. We try to work into an agreement as opposed to an annexation, because that's like, sending the troops in and we take the property away from them. We have avoided that primarily. I think there were some old annexations years and years ago, but annexation under state law has changed anyway, so it's not as easily done as it used to be. So in any event, we have a variety of agreements. So for instance, agreements on the right-hand side, just after you pass Lake Lansing Road. That area is a 425 agreement. Yep. That's a 425 agreement with Meridian Township. And at the end of the 30 years of the 425 agreement, anybody who's living in there gets to vote on whether they stay in East Lansing or go back to the township. That's our only agreement that's like that. The rest of them, basically, they're called a conditional transfer of land, but at the end of 30 years, the property becomes all East Lansing, and any part of the agreement is thereafter null and void. You know, it's just part of the city. So I don't know if that's what we're looking for, Diane, but we've continued to have those conversations. There are a couple of existing 425 agreements between other entities that have approached the city of East Lansing at various times to see if we want to take over the 425 agreement. And of course, both of those entities will continue to receive their taxes, you know, from the property. But that way we control future development in there and even reconstruction, because some of these areas have, they were approved by the townships, and the construction is pretty cheap. And you know that it's not, it doesn't have a 50-year lifespan, it probably has a 20 or 25-year lifespan. And we would like to be in control of what happens after, you know, so.
If I remember correctly, I'll trust my memory, Mark, you can correct me. South of 69, they didn't have the same kind of infrastructure that we have. And so they weren't hooked up to the drainage system. They had septic tank systems and stuff. And so that's, and we've expanded our lines to them so that they had our infrastructure rather than having to maintain their septic fields and things like that. So that's because that was at the bottom of their boundary of their thing, and then the highway, when it came through, it kind of split that so that they didn't really have a choice at that point in time when that highway went through.
Yeah, there's one other aspect that I should mention is that, for instance, the property where Costco is, that property came in the city because the owner of the property had his nephew move into a trailer and then file an annexation petition, because that can be done by anybody that lives on the property. And then that's the only person who vote. Yes, we had the same thing happen, basically, where College Fields, the golf course is, all of that area had an annexation petition filed, and when we couldn't reach agreement with Meridian Township on how that could be transferred, the individual who filed the application or the annexation petition then voted against the annexation petition. That's why it's now serviced by Lansing under a different type of agreement, but it is still in Meridian Township.
So these two things are important. The voting precincts is just more informational, but the boundary with the 425 agreement, when we get to chapter 1 and it talks about the boundaries, then in our charter, it's important that we all know where our boundaries are and how our boundaries have different rules for different areas. And these are the ones that are still out there. The earlier ones, like I said, are very old, those 425 agreements. So I didn't ever do the whole city, just that portion. Otherwise, you have your magnifying glass trying to read the even if you try to enlarge it on your iPad or whatever, your tablet.
I'll
So
say one more thing, if I
yeah,
can.
sure.
There's also something that is about called detached. And I don't know how many people have been living here long enough to remember that in 1993 and 1994, there was a petition circulated to detach about a third of the city back into Meridian Township. Yeah, and the petitions actually failed on it. A lot of people who signed them didn't live in the city of East Lansing because, of course, our postal zone was all the way up through Bath and then over into Meridian Township. So a lot of people think they do, and they don't really live in the city. So though they didn't have enough petition signatures and it failed at that point in time, but it was very conflicting within the city. And we can go over the reasons why this was being done, but it was basically not a good reason to actually leave the city. And so there is that possibility that can happen.
Yes,
So the area of East Lansing, just for my information, we used to be about 6 miles square. How much has the 425?
We were about 6 miles square until 1995. Now we're about 11.5 square.
was a significant
Yeah.
425 agreement.
Yeah.
So that should help for next meeting. We don't seem to have, we only have the 3 chapters that we're going through. And so if you looked ahead to see if there's anything else that you would like, information wise for that meeting, we can have our staff put that together. And I guess just to get us started too for the future, as you go through this, you know, these first chapters up to 7 before we have our next public comment meeting, public hearing meeting. How about if anything comes up that you wish you knew or if you'd like to have, just shoot out an email and we can do that. You don't have to wait till the meeting because then we can have staff start to work on that. And anything else for the good of the committee?
We have questions on maybe technical aspects of what we're going to be addressing in the next meeting. Now would be the time to. So, because one thing that I was interested in is the vacancy in office section and how it works as an operation of law. Excuse me, where it just says any elected city office shall become vacant by operation of law without the necessity of any action upon the occurrence of a certain event. And how that, I'm on section 3.4, sorry. And just how that works practically, where I guess we might be dependent on that elected city official acknowledging a certain fact actually occurred. It's just, it's an interesting way in my mind to make that occur. A vacancy on city council just happens without any further action. So I was hoping maybe we could get some guidance from the city attorney as to whether that's a common provision in other city charters or whether there's a more concrete way that that can be accomplished, where if one of misconduct occurs by a city official, that the vacancy can be required in some, by a vote of council or something like that.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, there has been subsequent state law that has been enacted regarding public offices that generally allows any municipality to essentially petition the governor for a request for removal from office. And so that is an addition to what's in our charter, but I don't think that it necessarily preempts these sections. What recently in another community that I've had is similar to 3.4E, where an individual, a member ceases to maintain their legal domicile within the boundaries of the city. And so in that circumstance, a council person had obtained another house and there was a question about where they were really maintaining their domicile. And it came into questions of homesteading and voter registration, things of that nature. Typically, 9 times out of the 10, they probably happen. The individual member of council would acknowledge that and be the one to bring it forward and provide a resignation. But in that particular circumstance, they didn't. And so the council took evidence essentially, and the council was the one that made that determination. I don't think that this provision and I think this is exactly what you're getting at, rather than having council take action, this says by operation of law and without necessity of any action. If there's a question, if there's not a presumed yes or no, and so.
Right,
I
there's
think
no
that's a good
fact finder
point.
that's listed, there's nothing like that of who would be making it, unless you, I guess, bring a lawsuit, who would be the one making the determination about whether one of these facts is actually occurred.
Okay, that's.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I wasn't clear, I got
That's,
into,
that's,
Yeah,
that
and
answered
so-
my confusion.
So absent that, a section that says council shall be the arbiter of any determination under this section, then I think it would default to a determination by an Ingham County judge.
But should we be explicit about that or talk about that? That's.
right,
Yeah.
and what maybe the best course of action would be there.
And if I can add, when we made changes previously, our assumption was that if there was a question about any of these provisions under 3.4, that it would go to court and the judge would make the decision. Although they sort of state almost everything as a known fact. So
Yeah, that's.
Is that enough for you, Jonathan? You don't need anything more on that for next time?
I think so. I think just something to keep in mind as we discuss it at the next meeting. Maybe we want something more or something, or if we're satisfied as is, or whether we want to bring recommendations for changes.
No, I've got notes on almost every page, but of course it did. But I guess I thought they were kind of small, we would be kind of throwing it out, things like that, but like I've got a question about the oath of office. So they're required to take an oath of office. What does that oath actually represent? Quakers don't take oaths. Some oaths are required to exclude Quakers. It's historical, but you know what I'm saying? So what is the meaning of they're required to take the oath of office?
I'll have the city clerk give a sample of the oath of office. Rebecca, Robert, if we could have that sample oath of office
Well,
that everyone takes.
Is the point then that if they break that oath, that can be considered, is that, aren't they taking on these duties not to, without an oath? I guess I'm confused on the oath role.
It's really just to abide by the state's constitution, the US Constitution.
Right, the stand
And the
in
code
office
of ordinance, I
holders.
had to take a
Yeah.
similar oath
Yeah.
to hold the office of city.
We'll get a copy of this, but here's a sample going around with
Does
everybody.
anybody
has to
ever
do.
get prosecuted for not standing by their oath? No, but seriously, like, why, let's get it out there, it's not meaningful. We
I was
can't
gonna
enforce
say,
it.
you can be president with 34 felonies, but you can't serve on these lines of city council. So this actually came up in the Lansing Commission meetings the other day. I think they were removing their felony disqualification. I know a lot of other communities have, so
So ironic.
I think it's worth looking.
That's very ironic because removing the felony is an inclusivity choice. It's not excluding a bunch of people. I just find that a bit ironic. I totally support that. You've served your time. You've served your time. Okay, yeah, it looks very handsome. I like the font. Yeah, I just wonder, I want it should be pared down as possible. If there's things that are decorative. Yeah, or have there is a history of excluding, I just read about this, excluding Quakers because they refused to take an oath to anything and they refused to pledge. So, and they were abolitionists. That's a long time.
But this one says conviction of a felony while in.
Yeah,
Not
that's
just
different.
conviction
That
of
is,
a felony.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I would think that would.
Yeah.
A reason to.
Still enhance the courts.
Okay.
So we had one additional community member comment, if it's okay with everybody. If you wanted to say anything about the charter or you wanted to add anything, please, we want community input.
Thank you for the invitation.
There's 4 more chances to come in and get it. So unless there's anything else, these have been short meetings. I don't think the next meeting will be as short. We'll have
I do
some
have
good
one
conversation.
thought about, so as we talk about, we've got public comment after we've discussed 1 through 6. are we gonna be able to maybe revisit our discussion around 1 through 6 or recommendations, taking into account public comment? I mean, it's a cart horse conundrum for me.
I believe that in all of our agendas, we'll have old business, so we'll relist those things on those things. People should know, this is for the public to know what ones we're working on, so we have an overview, but they'll see our agenda if something else is gonna be discussed. And,
And we can revisit the previous public comments in relation to those areas.
and, as you go through, some things will affect a previous chapter, as we know. And so that might come into play too, but, our old business should cover that, I believe. So, anything else? Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I want to thank Rebecca for taking the minutes, and I need a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
It's been moved by Dr. Wilkerson Johnson and supported by Dr. Martinez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say sign. We are adjourned.
I just wanted to let you know.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, I have a bad.